All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Into the Lion's Den with your two favorite co-hosts.
Oh, I'm a favorite now. Captain Favorite over here.
Captain Favorite. JD Stevens and Christian Griffith, brought to you proudly by Pride Roofing and Construction and Level Creative Studios.
No.
Dude, you need to have more fun in your life.
I have plenty of fun.
You grown-ass man making cat noises, that guy knows how to make his life fun.
I have plenty of fun.
And stop worrying about what people are thinking about you. I mean, most of our viewers really only make it about 10 minutes into these videos anyway, so make sure that you're fun at the beginning, right?
I mean, that's kind of a bummer when you think about it, because sometimes it feels like the conversation doesn't start until after the 10-minute mark.
Yeah, well, we live in an ADHD world. You know, the dopamine has been released and it's time to move on to the next one, So anyways, let me get off my tangent here. What we're going to be doing today is something a little bit different than most of our other videos. We're just going to be discussing a current event. And I want to start by offering some kind of understanding, I guess, to the population why we wanted to jump into this. So we've never intended with this particular podcast to take any political stances or create any form of divisive language. It's all been for growth, whether that's personal, professional, spiritual, emotional. The topics that we like to capture are ones where we're literally just giving advice on things that helped us make our lives better, and personally or in business, and hoping people adapt some of those things and carry it on into the world and become a better person in some way. But this one, it does fall into the realm of becoming better and adapting. And we're going to be talking about the tariffs. So without throwing too much shade at each other for any kind of differences in terms of our political beliefs, not that they're all too different, but we're going to talk about the tariffs, how it's affecting our industry, how to look at this from more of an owner's perspective and understand how to capture more opportunity in the future, knowing what will be, this sequence of events has triggered and the dominoes will fall over time, right? We work in an industry, roofing and construction, where a lot of our goods are imported, mainly steel. Steel is the biggest one, right? We're not huge producers of steel. We used to be, right? But all of our steel products are imported from elsewhere, right? And so if tariffs are applied and things become more expensive, what's that going to do in the short term? What's that going to do in the long term? Why is this something that we think that there's opportunity for business owners, as long as they capture and aren't too resistance and find a way to navigate this short-term pain for the long-term gain that it potentially can be, right? So how do we want to get started on this?
So I'm going to mirror what you said, as far as this isn't about trying to stir up. We're not part of the community of like, let's make everyone angry at each other. That's not who we want to be, what we're doing. We're just talking about this strictly from like, here's how we are going to see it affect our business realistically for the next little while. But here's where we might stand as far as benefits that we will gain, or cons potentially, as we talk through this, from the changes. What things might change in our industry or in the industries about. So I kind of want to come at it from, I'm going to step out of our industry for a minute of specifically speaking about clothing, because I'm very familiar with like that type of world and things like that. Of if you pay attention to, everyone has experienced it, what's been going on with clothing in the last few years, the base material on a lot of our clothing has just continued to get less and less quality. And some of that has come from, we've had zero pushback. So we're buying whatever the lowest common denominator of that thing goes. Like, there's going to be companies that produce cheap stuff always. It's always going to be a thing. But brands that used to be premium or quality have become not that any longer because of the perpetual outsource that America has gone through
Mhm.
and will continue to go through because we are a consumption nation now. We can talk about this in the fact that we have labor shortages in every um, physical job
Mhm.
in the US. So we have a shortage as far as all of that goes for anyone doing blue collar work is probably the best way to say that. Nursing, I mean, we've seen it. So tariffs play into all of this. Um, because we've outsourced all of that, we also had really bad deals
Mhm.
with a lot of most of where we traded.
Mhm.
So, what was the primary way before federal income tax that U.S. made its money? Tariffs. So, it used to be that we didn't have to tax the citizens as heavily because we made arrangements with other countries through taxing their goods that we are importing and exporting because it goes both ways. And we made those we made those deals to where they were beneficial to us. And for a very long time, we haven't been making deals that are beneficial to the US.
Sure.
We have become the lowest common denominator in a lot of that.
Mhm. We've outsourced everything that requires manual labor in some way, shape, or form. You know, hands on the material. We've become kind of a think tank of a nation where we have intellectual jobs. We don't necessarily have a lot of blue collar or vocational style jobs. Now, there's always the need, right? We work in construction. There's always a need for construction.
Mhm.
People are replicating. There needs to be more homes. Homes that are being lived in are weathering. They need to be rehabbed in whatever way that they can be rehabbed, right? Like it's not like if you outsource everything to all the other nations and you don't put any emphasis on building quality workmanship amidst your population, what puts us in a position that we're in right now, which is essentially we depend on all of the other nations to provide just about everything for us. So we do the thinking, they do the working, right? Um, Now, I'm not saying that's a bad concept, but what I'm saying is it's a bad concept for a nation. This is, I guess, probably the only political statement that I'll make on it. It's a bad concept for a nation that wants to be sovereign and independent and
Mhm.
wants to be able to kind of take control over any particular area of the nation's well-being, right? If you depend on other people for things and you have bad trade agreements in place, you're just subject to whatever they feel is necessary to continue doing business with you, right? Um, the Chinese conversations are always. I mean, that's the biggest thing in the news all the time is about the unfair trade. Um, you know, certain ways that they'll, I guess, I don't know how far we want to go into particularly any of the different nations, but it's unfair, right? The
Yeah.
tariffs are on the import; they're not on they're tariffing all of our goods, but we're not doing the same, right? They're expecting it, and they're driving income into their nations by producing things and sending them to us, but there's no incentive for us to send anything to them. All of our manufacturing and labor type jobs are outsourced elsewhere. The idea of the tariff is to drive more homegrown work, create that sovereignty, create more jobs, create an opportunity for us to pay less in income tax. So at the very beginning of this particular conversation, yeah, goods are going to increase. We've already seen that, right? We saw at the beginning of quarter two huge increases in material costs, right? We've had to pivot and adjust, and our retail clients haven't been incredibly excited to see the changes in costs and stuff like that. Um, but over time, what it eventually will do is it'll drive manufacturing back into the nations. And I think that's where the opportunity capture really comes from,
Mhm.
right? Especially in construction. If we can manufacture more here and we have less, logistics and transportation costs involved with things, then it's going to ultimately drive the price of those goods back down. Even though we're going to pay more for the labor, we're going to pay less for the shipping and the that type of stuff, right?
We don't have to ship it across an ocean.
Yeah, we don't have to ship it across the ocean.
Probably going to be, even though our labor is higher,
Yeah.
if we don't have to ship it across an ocean, This is probably the only political thing I'll say. Environmentalists should be all about this.
They probably should be, right? You know how much, oil and gas is guzzled in the midst of,
Shipping across the ocean.
yeah, right.
It's crazy how much. I mean, how much freight we move on
Mhm.
our waterways. There's a myriad of things I could go into there. I
Yeah.
won't because they're tangents.
Yeah. You don't want to rabbit hole today.
I do aggressively, so I'm not going to.
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, all I was really trying to get to is when you think about this in a long term view, right? As long as, if it continues on the route that it is, the tariffs are in place, what's eventually going to happen is to drive manufacturing back into the nation. It's going to, increase the amount of jobs available. It's going to increase the amount of focus on vocational trades and, you know, people learning how to do quality work, not just thinking. Now, there's value to both of those types of positions and both of those types of things, but you go into a public school system and it's a wide variety of humans that are inside a public school system. They don't all fit into one little category, right? So there are people who, I mean, I've always loved to build things my entire life. I never thought that I was going to be in construction, but I loved to build anything and everything. I loved my shop classes. I loved my ag classes. I loved woodworking. I loved working with my hands. I liked the landscaping. I liked everything, right? Anything that I could see the fruit of my labor in front of me as I did it, which that's one of the things I struggle with the most in my position right now is like I work in communications and sales. I mean, the only thing that you can really see tangible from that is when there's a signature on a page with a dollar value assigned to it, right? And everything else is all hypothetical. It's all just words. It's nothing more than that, right? And so there's something, whether it's cathartic or therapeutic or whatever the word may be, there's value in putting workmanship into something and seeing the result of your labor, right? And I think that we've lost track of that and we've devalued that particular subsect of our population, right? And that's not the right way to look at things. You talked about labor shortages. I had this conversation with a guy a couple days ago where I found out his background. He's a contractor for a very long time, and he was asking us about labor and I was like, look, finding good labor right now is like not finding a needle in a haystack. It's like finding a needle in 20 haystacks and they
Mhm.
never told you which haystack it was in. So you have to surf through all of them, right? When you find good labor, you either have to pay astronomical prices for it or they come with a caveat, right? That person, has, substance issues or stuff like that, right? Like it's really hard to find good work. And so that's part of that opportunity capture I was talking about. If we put more emphasis on us and we value these things and we build our people or population up to understand that you don't have to be a psychologist, you don't have to be a computer technician. You can work with your hands and continue what you love to do, which is build things, and you can be paid incredibly well for it. And you can do that here. You don't have to do that elsewhere. You don't have to travel to find the right gig and that type of stuff, right? So there's a lot to do with it. And as manufacturing drives back in, as a business owner, what you should be thinking about is how many partnerships can I establish with people who are going to jump on this train, right? If you find good connection points and you find good sources where people are going to produce quality products that are not traveling over the oceans to get here, and you can get in quick and you establish yourself as a good account, you're going to be able to be at the bottom. Well, our suppliers have tiers, right? And the tier is based off volume. Your cost, what you're going to pay for product, is dependent on how much you're actually going to buy, right? And so you get, when you jump ahead of these types of things, because this is the current juncture, whether anybody really likes it or they don't, that's what we're doing as an organization, or I mean as a country, right? um, we need to get in, quick. We need to find those sources. We need to spend time, and encourage our population and our young kids, and the vocational trades are actually a very valuable thing, and they shouldn't be looked at like, you're a screw up because you're a plumber. You're not a screw up because you're a plumber. You know how much a plumber gets paid per hour? Right? Maybe you work with shit and you don't actually like that, but at the same time, $100 an hour is a pretty damn good pay.
It-
Right?
It's crazy when I think about it going through high school.
Mhm,
I assume we went to high school at similar times. It was vilified
mhm. Absolutely.
of, I was one of those people that knew um, I probably wouldn't have the patience for school. I was intelligent enough and those kind of things, but I freaking hate busy work to the end of everything.
Mhm,
And that's what school felt like 99% of the time to me.
mhm.
of very little of it was about the actual learning. I went to a trade school for audio engineering. That's what my background is. And I graduated with 3.8, and it didn't feel like I tried the whole time
Mhm.
because it just came that easily because
Well,
I'm
you're
really
focused on
good in
something
that.
that you liked doing.
Yeah.
Right? If you like working with your hands, you like building things, you like, establishing, a mechanism and a system and creating the gears and greasing those gears and making them more efficient. And you can place your mind and your body in this, this nice little space where you're not only like you're working, but you're not really working. You're having fun the whole time that
Hmm.
you're doing it. Like that's one of the things I like about this job now, is that it doesn't always feel like work. When I'm sitting behind a computer and I'm writing emails and I'm, giving out disciplinary measures and that type of stuff, frankly, I hate it. I think that it sucks. I hate busy work. I hate paperwork. I hate it. But when I'm on a job site, I don't even realize I'm at work. Right? There's nothing less fun than being out there and watching the fruit of your labor being built right there in front of you. Right. And so um
And we're going to see more of that. This is, if we stick with what our normal theme is, this is an incredibly powerful time for entrepreneurs.
mhm,
Is it going to be a little bit spooky?
mhm,
Sure.
yeah. Well, I
But
mean, the cost of living in the United States, in a consumer nation where, it's not it, it's not cheap to live in the United States,
mm-mm.
right? When you live here, you know, driving manufacturing back to America, I mean, that's one of the biggest issues that people have with it is the goods are going to cost more. But the goods are only going to cost more perceptually if you're only focused on the transaction of the good, not the making of the goods, not the logistics of the goods, not the oil that's saved, the time, the logistics, the planning, and all of those other things. And then you add to that too. If all of this really works out the way that it's supposed to work out, ultimately that would mean that there's a way for us to drive down income taxes and sales taxes and everything else that you're taxed on as an American, right? And so you get more of the money that you earn, right? What current what's the current cost right now? It's like you make 40% of or 40 cents off the dollar based off of how many times you're taxed into, in different layers of the taxation system, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So you're making 40 cents on the dollar that you earn, right? If you make 80 cents on the dollar that you earn, you're probably not that concerned that this, you know, whatever it is, this box of nails costs $15 when it used to cost 10, right? You're not that concerned because you're making more money, you're retaining more money. And not only that, but you have more job opportunities available to you because, like you said, it's a great input or a great insertion point for entrepreneurs, right? We need people to build businesses. We need people to buy, not just buy local, but produce local, right?
Mhm.
That requires people, that requires time, that requires a paycheck, right? There's a lot more opportunity, and that just drives commerce internally. It makes us more sovereign. It makes us more independent, and it makes us so, we're never in a position where the people that we have issues with in foreign policy are the ones that we depend on for, it's a pretty crazy thought that half or more of the pieces of your nuclear bomb was made by your enemy,
Mhm.
right? That's a crazy thought, right? Whether they just stopped, if they
Or
just
someone we're
stopped,
just neutral with.
right, right. And so and there was, I cannot remember the name of the guy, but there's a video where this guy holds a pencil, like just a number two pencil, just a standard yellow pencil, and he said that this is a marvel of the modern world. And he said this pencil would not exist without import export because you have to get graphite from Ukraine or X, Y, and Z. You have to get the wood from somewhere in Brazil. You have to get the paint. Oh, here we go. Right, the amount of different countries involved with making just this one thing is, I mean, it's cool that as a population we've been able to work together enough to be able to produce products like this. But at the end of the day, right, at the end of the day, if you can't produce simple things in house, and what happens when you can't connect with those people any longer? What happens if the nation's in a position where you can't get the graphite, you can't get the wood, you can't get the paint, you can't get the printer, you can't get the rubber for the eraser, right? We're just supposed to go on living without pencils and ways to write. So how can we be an intellectual or think tank of an organization if we can't you can't even get a tool to write your thoughts down. Right. I should have probably been more prepared before I brought that up. I cannot remember the name of the guy, but I mean, but this is the way that it, this is a product of the way that, God damn.
Get there.
Ugh. I'm not crying. I promise you're crying. Anyways, this is a product of the way that we've done business and how we've structured the world. Right. There's very important things that can happen if investment and buy-in happen with the trades and all the negotiations go the way that they're supposed to, right? It can be very powerful for America, not just for lowering income tax and making things more accessible and making more jobs, but for the entrepreneur to insert themselves and become one of those catalysts to the growth internally for America.
Well, and I was trying to say it, but good trade is good for everybody. We're not saying that, yes, the tariffs that have been placed in some places are crazy. Sure, all in that. But a lot of places also came to the table and said, let's work together to make this better for everybody. That's good for not just American citizens, but also the citizens of those countries that are now coming to the table to work with us and making the deals more fair for both countries.
Right. Well, I mean, that's kind of like if you're in the middle of let's say a business deal, and everybody leaves the table with some form of a smile, that was a successful business deal, right? Nobody should be getting raked over the coals in a business deal. And that's what America has essentially done to themselves or ourselves over time, created these trade policies that we're just being manipulated at every single turn. And because we're such a wealthy country, we've just been dealing with it, right? But at the end of the day, sovereignty is a very important thing. Why do you think the United States exists, right? We wanted to get away from tyranny. We wanted to get away from taxation. Instead, we created a new way to tax ourselves to the nth degree because we outsourced all of our labor before, because we did all of these things. And so it seems to be a reset that not everybody wants to get involved with. But at the end of the day, it's just that's the current event. That's what we're involved with. So resisting what's happening is just like when we were talking about AI, right? It's like AI is never going to go anywhere, right? It is going to be at the forefront of everything technologically based for forever. And it's just going to get more powerful, more useful, and more, utilized by other people. And if you don't jump into that stream and start going with the flow of things and starting to learn how to utilize it, you're going to be left in the dust. And that's the same thing, I guess, with this particular conversation.
I made a point, and we had a private off-air conversation about this, but I said something in that of, one of the things that I read and one of the things that I was nervous about of like, well, what happens in an administration change and they just gut it? The object would be to make this to where it's so beneficial to everybody that an administrative change wouldn't want to cut it. So it's going right now, it seems extreme, but it's just like what it's just what Doge is doing. Is it probably a little bit aggressive? Yes. We're going in with a chainsaw when it should be a chisel. But we can always rebuild. Trees regrow limbs.
Sometimes, the administration may make mistakes, right? And I understood, from the get-go when the tariffs were announced, why some of them were so heavy, right? And you think about when you go into a business deal, right? You're generally offering the highest price that you're going to offer up front, right? Because if somebody says yes to you, you'll have a higher profit, right? Why wouldn't you go in asking for everything, right?
You leave yourself room to negotiate.
You need to be able to negotiate down. That's the important part. You need to have, and whoever has the most amount of leverage is the one that's going to be able to negotiate to the level that they want to have, right? And in the world that we live in, United States has the majority in all nations, except for maybe in the Chinese, the China trade war, I guess, right? We have the leverage in all of those situations. So all we're trying to get is an evenly established, we're going to work together. We're not going to be, gouging each other at every corner. You want to bring yours in. We want to bring ours, we want to take ours out. Let's do this. Let's do this fairly. Let's make sure it's equitable for both parties. Let's move on from there, right? The important part of all this is equalizing business stature, but as a country, right?
It's one of the most important things we teach sales reps.
Mhm.
Make yourself equal in your business stature. America's a business,
Mhm.
point blank and period. The UK, the EU, China, they are a business. The government ultimately is a business
Mhm.
to take care of our citizens, to provide programs that we want to provide, and all of those kind of things. You have to have money.
Mhm.
If we don't equalize our business stature, eventually piling more debt on is going to lead to a thing called austerity, where all of the debt is called. It's what happened in Greece when we were in high school. Forced austerity. They lost everything.
Mhm.
Sure, they've recovered from it now, but it was ugly there for a while.
Sure.
From what I remember of like,
Well, you ever watch those videos of, in Venezuela where they're literally like, because they overprinted money because of how much they devalued their currency, they were literally just burning them in the street.
Mhm.
There's so much extra paper currency, notes for whatever, gold notes or whatever it is, that they were literally burning it in the streets. We're on a trajectory as a company, country. I don't use those words synonymously. We're on a verge of having to do something like that if there's not some form of equalization, some form of reset. And during anything that creates waves, it always opens a gap for people who are opportunistic.
Mhm.
And that's what we wanted to address in this particular conversation. Bring your labor back. Establish more jobs. Establish more production value, unique goods that are homegrown. They're built here. You don't need anybody else for it. At the end of the day, if you're cut off from everybody else, are we going to be able to survive? And unfortunately, the way that we've created America, we're not. We're not going to survive. You have to create those boundaries. You have to be able to do things yourself, right? I mean, that's the plight of the off-grid people. What are they called? People that homesteaders, right? I mean, they don't want to depend on anybody for anybody else or for anything else, and that's an important thing for a country. If it's the most wealthy country in the world and it's the most consumer centric company in the world, and it's got all of these things that make America as great as America is, you should probably want to create a legacy opportunity where it stays that way for forever, right? Let's learn from history. Let's learn from the mistakes of Greece, Venezuela, or any other company or
Russia
countries, right?
went through it at one time.
Right, that have made these poor choices, and let's learn how to produce our own products. Let's learn how to keep our people employed, and let's not vilify people who want to work in vocational trades. Let's actually amplify them. Let's learn how to direct them. Right? It's crazy to me. I've had conversations with counselors at the kids' schools and stuff, and they don't even really talk about vocational trades with people until they get to high school and they start failing. And that's when they start talking about vocational trades. Like,
It's crazy.
You're not smart enough to do math on a piece of paper. You can do it in your head, but you're bored when you're in school because you're antsy. Yeah, you're going to be a mechanic now, right? That's the only time we talk about it. It's like it's default a bad thing. Default, that's crazy, right?
We're forcing kids to feel lesser for not wanting to to sit at a desk.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be totally real. A lot of jobs in the US boil down to sitting behind a desk. And as a guy who sits behind a desk for 8 hours a day, I can tell you there's days that it's absolutely the worst thing in the freaking world.
Right.
And
it's not to say that there's anything bad about wanting your kids or people to aspire to be doctors and lawyers and create new technologies and be computer engineers or engineers in general. Like, that's great, right? That's not for everybody, right? Let's create new opportunities for our future generations to shine in the way that they want to shine. Everybody has a unique personality. We talked about that in the episode we talked about tailor fit management. You can't manage people the exact same way. Why would we train, and cultivate small humans the same way? You're putting round pegs in square holes, and you're screwing our future up by doing it.
We totally are. And we've seen I don't know. I've seen so much of like people that went into like office type roles and followed that through college or
Mhm.
through college and did what we were taught in high school, who have left and gone into trades because they were so miserable.
Mhm.
But if you would have told them like you're never gonna love this, just go do that
Mhm.
right now, right out of high school, we wouldn't be having the same conversations we're having about student loans and how scary those are that they're being turned back on and being turned to collections because people would have pursued things that they actually liked.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I mean, I might not go as far as, Charlie Kirk, which I really like Charlie Kirk saying that all college is a scam, but I think that there's a lot of collusion in the midst of all of that. And I think that it's a lie that's being fed to the younger generations that the only way to be successful is if you go get a
Mhm.
degree. You get a degree in gender studies. The hell are you going to use that degree for? Right?
Nothing.
Ever at all. Degree in fine arts, right? You might be able to make really
There's a
cool
few
things.
jobs.
Yeah, but then there's 10,000 people campaigning for
Correct.
one job, right? You have to be the number one person out of 10,000 people, and you automatically eliminate yourself if you made one error over time in whatever way it was, whether it's grades or whatever, right? And so
Yeah.
it's we're creating just an interesting environment by looking at it in the wrong way and vilifying things that we shouldn't be vilifying. So I'm you know we will proceed with caution as we adjust to the things that the tariffs bring to us and all the changes that the administration have put into place. And but I look at it from a different perspective. I mean, we've all been fighting this world, this inflation for however long now, right? Goods, a roof in 2010, 30 square roof, 2010 probably would have cost a buyer somewhere to the tune of $7,000 to $8,000, right? A 30 square roof right now in 2025 costs something to the tune of $25,000, right? Inflation is there. We have created this where we just need more and more money. Why don't we find ways to generate that money ourselves?
Mhm. And empower the disenfranchised
Yeah.
of I I know that there is a ton of people who don't work who would willingly work or can't work or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Um I mean, I have a really smart friend that did 27 interviews for his career field that he loves more than anything in the world, but can't get hired because there's not enough jobs because ultimately they need more people building the product to justify having more people in an office type position. And it's hard.
Yeah. Not everybody can be an executive or an officer. Not everybody can be. There's only so many positions to fill. Until we create more positions, and driving manufacturing back will create more positions.
And addressing CEOs making 300%.
Yeah. No, when we had that little tiff, it was funny. I was like, man, I wish I really felt that. Yeah. If I was making 300%, I might be changing my tune a little bit. But at the same time, it's like I'm never for the ideas of taxing the rich. I think that's a ridiculous statement. I think that there just needs to be changes to the way that we conduct ourselves as people. I don't feel like I'm entitled to 90% of somebody who has been very successful, right? And that's
Mm.
that's the way that the current culture really looks at it. I'm not entitled to their money. They've earned that right. Now, have they earned it the right way, right? Are they manufacturing all their goods, using slave labor in a different country so that they can get to that 300%, right? Or 300x times their employees' wages or
Yeah,
whatever, right? Not 300%. It's
300 times.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I did that wrong. It's 300 times. It's like, come on.
Yeah. But if at the end of the day, right, I believe in free trade. I believe in the ideas of capitalism. I think that you should get out there and you should use what you have and do what you can where you can and take yourself to the heights that you want to get to, right? Not everybody has the their eyes set on. We've talked about this before. Not everybody wants to be a billionaire. They'd be like, that would be cool, right? But to get to the point where you're a billionaire, you've given up your entire life to get to that point. there's no balance to anything,
Mm-mm.
right? What quality of life is there? So it's, you know, we've got to, we probably got to do a lot of self reflection as a country and realize where we're making these errors and find a way to unify our thoughts so that we're all marching to the right beat. Because if we don't, we're going to fall behind, and America's not going to be the most powerful nation in the world for forever.
And I don't even know if I'm marching to the right beat, but all of us are part of the same music.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that because every instrument has its place in the proper symphony. And if we create a powerful symphony where every instrument feels like they have their spot inside of this symphony, we will be better.
Mhm.
And if we're all playing to the same music, but in our individual parts, we're going to be.
Yeah. So, well, about opportunity capture, we've nailed a couple of things pretty well, which is entrepreneurs, keep your ears to the ground on where you can insert yourself. Um, let's be smart if you're already an entrepreneur about creating strategic partnerships with people who are already bringing manufacturing back into the nation. Let's find ways to get into the right tier so you're paying less for product. You're getting the benefit of the volume that you're driving towards that area, right? Um, what other benefits really you think like the opportunity capture can you think of offhand?
I've one of the big opportunity captures we have is specifically the relationships, like you're talking about with vendors. I intentionally, even though it would be cheaper to work with like XYZ on the internet, of like, or like our shirts and things like what we have embroidered in that, I've always worked with people local. Um, Relationships, and I feel like I get a equal to, if not superior, product most of the time.
Equal to or superior. Most of the time it is superior, right? Most of the time there's quality and there's time spent to create whatever that product is. And not only that, but there's easier access to it,
Mhm.
right? You get VIP treatment when you're shopping local, right? You go into Target, you might be able to track down an associate who has no idea what they're doing after 10 minutes of searching, or you could walk into a local shop that has what you are looking for and somebody who's incredibly experienced because he built that shit by hand right then and there, right? And that there's something powerful with that. We're huge proponents of shopping local. We talk about this all the time, like with insurance restoration, right? What's There's an incredible economic surplus that comes into areas where catastrophic storms happen, right? Like it's the federally insured insurance companies are bringing in this money and they're paying off these claims, and although they don't necessarily want to do that, that's the way that the policies are written,
Mhm.
right? And that money, if it's driven to local contractors, if it's driven to local service providers of whatever sort that is necessary for that particular thing, that money gets recycled inside of that community, right? It's paid for at the pump when they're filling up their trucks to go into the work. It's paid for at the grocery store after they all got their pay for their 2 weeks of time spent. It's going into the school systems. It's paying for backpacks and clothes, and it's going right. It's drive it internal. Let's take care of each other. Let's work with local people, right? I understand the benefit of going to, Walmart and paying 1/10 the cost for this pair of pants than you would over here. But at the end of the day, that pair of pants is going to expire in, a year, as opposed to the one that was 10 times as much lasting a lifetime, right?
Mhm.
There's value to, you get what you pay for, right? And so there's a lot of benefit to driving your dollars local, driving your manufacturing in-house, so on and so forth.
Yeah, supporting your local businesses. I mean, through this is going to be specifically talking about the tariff conversation. Supporting local businesses right now is an imperative. Supporting local entrepreneurs and things and folks that provide services, bike shops and things like that. Please support your local businesses right now, because this is every bit, if it seems scary to you, it's twice as scary to them.
Mhm. Yeah,
Of
it's uncharted water. People don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future as things go, right? We just threw a boulder into a lake right? The very beginning are the biggest waves. Eventually, it pulls out,
Yeah.
right? But you don't know where you're going to be, where you're going to be displaced to, unless people support each other,
Mhm.
right? Go in and we buy local, and we focus on making sure that the people who are out there doing the labor jobs right now are being paid well, and they're being treated well, and we're getting quality and over quantity, quality over quantity in every situation that we can. We're doing our damnedest to protect our country just by the decisions that we make. You make decisions, you make policy and political decisions every day just by where you buy your goods, right? Let's actually conscientious.
Yeah. Go to your farmer markets.
Yeah. Those people work incredibly hard, and it's the best tasting food that you're going to get.
It's
So,
incredible. I mean, it's a completely different caliber of food when
Yeah.
you buy local. So
yeah, we had that was one of the things that I wanted to, I guess, emphasize the most when we had um I'm having such a hard time. Abbott and Abbott and Wallace. Is that the name of the distillery?
Yeah.
We had them in. That was the thing that I liked the most about their process, was that they found their farmers. They went out and surveyed the land with them, and figured out how they cultivate their crops, and they figured out why it is that this tastes this way versus this. They put time and ingenuity, like they put real time into finding the way that they want their products to taste, right? We're losing that as a country if all we're doing is outsourcing for lesser quality so that we can get a lower cost on that whatever the good is.
yeah, just so that we can get a lesser quality. I'm a huge proponent of grass-fed beef.
Mhm.
It's all I buy. I buy a half a cow every year. I guess I'm down to a quarter because there's only 2 of us in the house now, but it's better. They only raise around 10 animals a year. And it's better in every way. Shop local. Know where you were sourcing, just for your health. Know where you're sourcing your food.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that we used to talk about health and fitness a lot on the podcast, and truthfully, that's one of the most powerful things. I'm terrible as far as that goes,
Mhm.
but when you know where you're buying your food from, and it's not coming out of a big mill like anything that is in the grocery store, it's
Yeah.
completely different.
Right. The crops are pumped with pesticides, and there's artificial everything packed in. If the ingredient label is longer than like a college dissertation, might not be good for you to eat, right? That's actually when I was in college, I took a 300 level nutrition class, and that was the thing. The lady, I can't remember the professor's name, but she said, if there's one thing you will learn in my class that'll make you a healthier human, she said, shop on the periphery of the grocery store. She said, shop on the periphery. That's where you find your fresh produce. That's where you find your meat. Where you find your whole goods. And if you're going into the aisles, if it has less than 5 ingredients, it's okay to buy.
I can't think of anything.
You will be healthier than 99% of the population if you just follow that one rule. So we got on a tangent with that one,
We sure did.
but either way, it's kind of all boils down to the same thing. Let's support our community, support what's going on politically, and let's find the opportunity, and let's grow into whatever position we can with it. Right? Entrepreneurs, like I said, you should have your ears to the ground for every opportunity that this administration is putting forth for you guys. So
There's going to be a lot of opportunity if you're willing to take some risk.
Yeah.
But that's what entrepreneurs do.
Yeah.
You learn how to take smart risks.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't even seem smart. Jump off that cliff and you build the plane as you're falling.
I mean, I would share a, well, I don't have, never mind. We're just going to leave it. It's about an entrepreneur I know that failed multiple times and then finally developed multiple things that are very powerful.
Yeah.
And he failed a lot of different times. And,
Yep.
not going to go any farther on it.
Well, at the end of the day, I think, well, one of my mentor told me one time, he asked me a question and I was thinking about getting into doing running a business for myself. And he said, what's the worst thing that could happen from a decision? Die. That's the worst thing. What's the second worst thing? Like, so you could lose everything. It's like, yep. He's like, you have nothing now, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, are you okay with that? I'm like, well, no, that's why I'm trying to move forward. He's like, but you're alive, right? So take that for what it is. If you fail, you're just going back to square one. Start over, learn from it, apply all the learning lessons that you can, right? Over and over and over. Eventually, you'll find a way to succeed. Right now, I think America has to do that. I think that we're just press and reset on a couple of things. We're going to create some really good things for ourselves.
I agree completely.
So, all right. That it?
I think that was it. I know it was a little bit different of an episode, guys, but thanks for sticking with us if you stuck with us.
Yep.
Hopefully it wasn't too far into the political land, kind of looking at our producer. So
yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, well, as always, please like and subscribe, engage in the content, ask some questions. If there's any of those opportunity capture things that you can come up with, place those in the notes. Maybe we'll talk about those again. If you'd like to talk about, maybe you are a business owner and you like to watch the show. I would love to have you on, talk about how it's affecting you, how you're pivoting, what it is that you're doing to not only adjust to the market, but thrive through the adjustment within the market. We'd love to have that on the show. Those are the important things.
we'd love to have lots of local Northern Colorado businesses on, talk about, what it's like being Northern Colorado, Southern Wyoming. I mean, we want to talk with you guys. Like we said, we're a huge proponent of supporting local business. So if you want to come on and have a conversation with Christian or myself and talk about what you do, we'd love to have a conversation with anyone in the area. So marketing at Pride-Roofing is a great way to do that.
Right on. All right. Well, that's it. Catch you on the flip side.
Bye, guys.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you've gathered enough ammunition to go out, fight the good fight, and become a better person every single day. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content, ask us some questions. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you.